very hard in the stock market to feel too successful. I mean, but in all seriousness, that's like one of the great things about, whether it's sports or the stock market, it's like you're knocked down a lot. I mean, it's tough and you're going to go through some good times and some bad times.
Welcome to All That Glitters.
It's a very humbling game or sport or business or whatever, because you're not always going to be successful. It's hard.
A podcast about inspiring relationships and stellar humans.
If your focus isn't on just kind of constantly getting better and focusing on that instead of the day-to-day results, it's going to be a tough go.
With Haley Page, wedding dress designer, and her fiance Conrad Lewis, fitness blogger and personal trainer.
Well, hello there. Have you ever wanted to be a billionaire? Today we are talking to an extremely talented and high-performing guest to find out what habits we can incorporate into our daily lives for success. He is a minority owner of the Hornets with Michael Jordan and a stock-picking wizard. Gabe Plotkin, who manages billions of dollars of assets, is here to discuss everyday habits to help us assimilate a successful lifestyle.
You are actually the first guest we've ever had on our podcast, so thank you so much. But I'm very curious, have you done a podcast before?
This is a first.
Okay,
I've been interviewed in various settings from an investment perspective, but podcasts are new to me. I like Conrad a lot, so I was afraid he wouldn't be my best friend if I didn't do this. So there's a lot of pressure.
All right. So you're on a podcast that has a lot to do with relationships and stellar human beings. I think you can speak very well to both of these categories, from the dynamics in how you run your team and instill company culture. It takes a pretty stellar human, if you ask me. So we're so excited to hear what you have in your industry value-wise, and you're the first of your kind on our podcast.
Okay, sounds good.
So for those of you who don't know who Gabe is,
Everyone.
He was the top trader for Steve Cohen's fund SAC, and then he started his own shop in 2014 called Melvin Capital, named after his grandfather. And since then, Melvin has returned some of the most impressive numbers in the hedge fund industry.
And good research.
A cursory Google search.
Unbelievable. This Google thing works. All right.
Yeah. We should invest. So, Gabe, you're consistently one of the highest performers in your industry. What's the secret, man? Help us out. What are we doing wrong?
It's a fairly broad question. I mean, on some level, I think it's kind of setting your own expectations. How are you defining yourself? And I think for me, wherever I've been in my life, it's just do the best you can. Just keep getting better. Find a way to improve every day. And when I was, when I started in this industry, people say, "Oh, is this your plan?" And some people have those goals, those plans. My plan was like, just get better every day. Just find a way to keep improving, figure out what works in this business, and keep building upon it. And over the course of many years, that kind of brought me to a place that I never would have envisioned when I started. But that was really the focus, is how do I just keep improving? And, if you're hardworking and you have a decent ceiling, like, good things can happen. And so even now, it's just keep getting better every day. I don't really think about, I look at the size of my fund and where we are in the industry, and it's kind of shocking to me. In terms of what we've accomplished, because it's sort of just been a series of days, increments.
How much do you attribute versus team versus just individual skill?
I think in the early days when I got to SAC, I was running $500 million and I had a couple guys on my team. And I think I could have been successful kind of driving everything at a relatively smaller size. But eventually, if you want to grow and build and build the business, you have to start hiring good people. You have to really train people. You have to invest in those people, understanding that the more you teach them, the more, the higher your organization can go, the bigger your organization can become. And it becomes more fulfilling because you're sharing it with other people as well. And so, over time, it's really become about the team, and they've bought into what we're trying to accomplish. And I actually have an easier time today running $10 billion than I did in 2007 running $500 million, because all the pressure back then was really on me to do the majority of everything. Today, there's guys that I've worked with for 5-10 years that have learned so many things, that are very thoughtful in what they do. And so it makes my life much easier. And now I just have to kind of manage and oversee it all. But it actually creates greater balance than I used to have.
Wow. I love the comment you made about finding little ways to improve every day, because something that resonates with me is the idea that you don't know everything and that there's always something new to learn. And so that always makes it kind of exciting and all about the chase versus this moment in time where you feel successful.
Yeah. It's very hard in the stock market to feel too successful. I mean, but in all seriousness, that's like one of the great things about, whether it's sports or the stock market, it's like you're knocked down a lot. I mean, it's tough, and you're going to go through some good times and some bad times. So it's a very humbling game or sport or business or whatever, because you're not always going to be successful. It's hard. And so if your focus isn't on just kind of constantly getting better and sort of focusing on that instead of the day-to-day results, it's going to be a tough go.
So in the process of you becoming you, is there a moment in your career that was super defining for you in knowing you'd be good at this, like something from your past or your education specifically?
I think, so what happened was I was at this other firm, and I went there. I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was an analyst. And after about 18 months, my boss left, and I was given the opportunity to kind of step in. And I look back, I had no idea what I was doing. But we had pretty good, and at the time it was actually just me, but I had good results for, the back half of 2005, 2006. And so Steve Cohen started, his team started calling me and recruiting me. So I go to SAC. It was called SAC at the time. And I get there, and I start in the first half of 2007, I'm up some ridiculous amount. I'm just killing it. They think I'm the greatest, investor there is. And they keep giving me more money. And the summer hits, and I have the worst month I've ever had. So it's like I make a ton of money on a relatively small capital base. And then as my capital base doubles, I have a bad month and lose the large majority of what happened. And so you're kind of sitting there, and you're envisioning your first real payday in the industry. You're going to get rewarded. It's a big deal to kind of get past that hurdle. And then all of a sudden, poof, I had lost 80% of it. And it was a lot to kind of just mentally digest at the time. But, our team was able to kind of, pull it together, deal with that adversity. And by the end of the year, we had actually made back everything we had lost. But it was kind of a lesson in resilience, where it's okay, I did, it's the first time really dealing with something. And instead of kind of panicking and not being able to handle the situation, we kind of went back to what our process is, and we're able to kind of navigate through it. And I think in anything, when you've built that kind of muscle memory to handle difficult situations, you start to, know how to do that better in the future.
Right.
I think you, in your hiring process, you're looking for people that know how to fail and bounce back, because ultimately they know who they are and what they can do. Yeah. I feel like that's almost that's a microcosm of your first failure in this world.
Yeah. For me, it's really just focusing on people that have a pattern of success, no matter what they've done. And I really like people who have done a lot of different things and have been successful in a variety of things. Because, I've talked about this before with Conrad, but in Wall Street, we usually hire a guy first or second year out of a major banking program. And so these people, they've been successful their whole lives for the most part. And they've gone to an Ivy League school sometimes, and they've gone to Goldman Sachs. But if they haven't done other things, be it sports or something else, and I like sports because I think in sports you fail a lot. And so you have to kind of understand, you build the ego to kind of handle that and understand you're not defining yourself by every at bat, every shot, every throw. And, in academics, those who are successful, they don't really fail. I mean, the good students get 4.0s, which means they get perfect grades on everything, and so in Wall Street, no matter how good you are, you're going to make mistakes almost half the time. And so, the ability to kind of handle that and make smart decisions and understand when you're right and when you're wrong is really important.
It almost sounds as though you run Melvin Capital like a professional sports team. It's almost as if you look at sort of the resiliency that you develop in sports and how it's super translatable to the finance world. And it's just a major attribute that you're trying to hire from when you're looking for talent in your industry?
Yeah, I think it's that. And it's also, the ability to just, or the desire to compete. It's like if you're in this business and you're like, I'm just going to become a millionaire or, 10 million, whatever, it's an okay goal to have. I have no problem with that. But if you're like, you know what, I just want to get better. I want to compete. I take so much pride in what I do and how I go about it that I'm going to give it my all every day. And that's a mentality that oftentimes you do find in athletics. And so I think the combination is really important. When you've seen people that have been, competing in one area, whether it's sports or academics or anything, but they're able to then apply that competitively to a different field. I think it's really important because, for us, it's like, to go out there every day and just kind of grind and have that mentality. I do think a lot of that can come from sports.
I feel like that's a big part of, Haley, what's made you successful as well is your background in gymnastics.
Yeah, I loved what you said about ego and psychology in a workplace, because I think those two things are always overlooked when it comes to hiring people.
Yeah.
There's a tendency to just look at the skill set and the numbers, when really it does take this element of competition and accountability that you can very much develop doing sports your whole life.
For those of you that don't know, Gabe is actually a minority owner of the Hornets with the one and only Michael Jordan.
So we are actually super curious if you model any of your work ethics from Michael Jordan, or specifically personal heroes in the sports realm.
I mean, I think inherently, as you build an organization and a team, it pulls from everything that you've encountered in your life. And when I was growing up, and it's interesting this year because Michael filmed The Last Dance, which got incredible viewership, partly because we were in a pandemic. But I think everyone got to appreciate in the younger generation the competitor that he was, and really the person that he was. And
Right.
But that was what I grew up with. And as somebody that loves the game of basketball, he definitely was an idol of mine, and his approach and his competitiveness and his desire to win and to compete and really, just keep driving with that in mind and try to elevate those around him. It certainly played a part in how I just kind of approach things in general. There's certain people you look up to for the successes that they've had. And the amazing thing was he was one of those people for me. He still is. But then obviously I got to meet him and spend time with him related to the Hornets. So, that was a great thing. And then to sort of bring back all these memories and to see it up close in The Last Dance, you're really reminded of really just what an incredible competitor he was. And you watch The Last Dance and there's all these stories he shows and things he does. There's one where, a guy, LaBradford Smith, scores like 37 points and Michael guarded him. That never happens against Michael. And LaBradford goes up to him after the game and he says, like, "Good game, Mike." And Jordan's so pissed that this guy, like, he's like, this guy's disrespecting me. And so, like, the first half, they literally played the team the next night. He scores the first half. He tries to drop 37 on him in the half just to show him, like, I'm going to compete. I'm going to come out there. You don't do that to Michael Jordan. And he scored 36. He didn't quite get the 37, but it wasn't a half. But then people asked him years later, like, did he ever say that? And he never said it. And it was just like, this is a guy who's so competitive that he's creating things in his mind,
Right.
Just to motivate himself. And I do think there's an element of that where, like, you're trying to compete and you're trying to motivate yourself and you want to be the best that you can be. And sometimes you have to kind of create that self-doubt that you perceive others to have just to kind of drive yourself.
Fascinating. Yeah.
It's almost like there's a consistent theme, and definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like with you, there's a consistent theme in that you put a premium on resiliency.
Yeah.
Because you're going to fail. That's inevitable. And the insurance policy you take when it comes to your business and yourself is that knowing failure is an absolute. You just have to have security that that's not going to wreck you and that you have a game plan afterwards.
Well, because in the stock market, there's moments and times where, you buy a stock and you can lose a bunch of money, but that doesn't mean you're wrong. But you're going to come to that juncture and you're going to have to kind of decide, am I right or am I wrong? I've lost all this money. And I think somebody who doesn't have the right self-esteem or has ego problems, they may lead themselves to the wrong decision because they feel like it's an attack on them, the person. Mm-hmm. And I think somebody who's more resilient and can kind of see past that is more focused on what's next, making the right decision at that point in time. And so
just eager to like prove his point and prove his worth, knowing.
And so they end up compounding an issue.
Yeah.
And we had a guy like that, and it became very kind of competitive and nasty. And it's like, there's no room for that.
Well, so you're saying you had a guy that you worked with and it was too much about self and it wasn't enough about the team.
Yeah. That didn't work out.
We both think you have the perfect person to be our first guest on this podcast because we look at our relationship as a team. And I know you look at Melvin Capital as a family-like team. And in that sense, one team member is picking up where there might be a deficit for another team member, but ultimately it's about a greater thing than self. And I think it sounds like that's exactly how you run Melvin. I know that's how we look at our relationship and sort of our motto, like neither one of us are greater than the relationship as a whole. And it's almost mission focused.
Yeah, that's a great approach that you guys have. Maybe I should have you guys into my office.
Yeah. I wouldn't go that far, but actually something Conrad has told me frequently is that you have a remarkable memory for sports statistics and stock behaviors. Mm-hmm. And memory is just one thing for me that I feel is my weakest attribute. And so I'm curious if this is something like your memory, do you exercise it on the daily or have you always had a stellar memory?
It's freaky. This guy, his
secrets.
His sports statistics he's like an automaton when it comes to sports statistics and obviously stock behavior, but you might expect that.
Trust me.
Honestly, you might be better at sports statistics than stock behavior.
Probably am. I mean, I think it's like, some people, remember every aspect of evenings and, like I meet somebody and I might forget their name 5 seconds after meeting them. People say, you got this great memory. How'd you forget their name? Or, where you went out to dinner last night. I think for things I'm really passionate about and numbers just kind of stick in my head, that those are the things I just kind of focus on. And it's good in my position because I have to look at, we cover 500-600 companies. And so to kind of be able to digest everything my team is sending me and really remember all the key points, it does come pretty naturally to me. So that's really positive, but it is.
So I'm screwed, right?
I mean, but it is a little selective because this aspect of my life, I think it's sort of, it's like my wife says, I'm very smart in certain areas. Well, those are the two areas you named. So, other areas, I got my own challenges.
Well, can't you remember a fabric from like 2010 that you used on a runway show, Hales?
Sure. We can give myself credit there.
There you go.
Oh my gosh. So I love that you brought up your wife because this is a relationship, love, and stellar human-based podcast. But I just was curious if I could ask where you met your wife or the first time you laid eyes on her. What was it like?
Yeah, it was I was drinking tequila just like I am now.
Perfect.
Actually, it may not have been tequila, but it was I was living in Chicago and I was in New York for a couple of days to look for an apartment. I'd already accepted a job offer and I was moving to New York, and I had a friend's wedding that weekend from college. So we had several friends in town. So we all went out and went to a bunch of bars and I don't even remember where. And at the end of the night, it was probably 2-3 in the morning. We were somewhere in the West Village. We went to a diner and we had met some girls. We were hanging out with the girls at the diner. And then these two other girls came in and they're probably a little more attractive than the girls we were with. And so my buddy immediately kind of went over there and started talking to them. He did become the best man at my wedding, so I have to give him that. But I went over there. I said, okay, yeah, I'll go sit with my buddy. And we kind of hit it off, my wife and I. And I said, look, moving to New York in a week, I'll give you a call. that wasn't my initial plan, moving to New York and immediately getting tied up, but we hit it off. And it was my last night in Chicago, and I was kind of making a bunch of calls, having fun. And I happened to call her that night, and it was her birthday. I didn't know it. And so it was like, even like I'd gone back to New York. I called her. I'm like, it was her birthday. So that was kind of like a special thing. And
Kismet.
Yeah, I was like, I'm moving in a couple of days. We'll go out. And so it was really cool. Like, and Conrad kind of describes this, when you guys were dating, there really were no rules. Like, I think with a lot of girls that I've dated in the past, everyone's playing games and thinking of rules. And with her, it's just very natural. It's kind of like, okay, you know what? I want to call her. We want to hang out. I'm going to call her. And she felt the same with me. And we just kind of hit it off. And now we got a bunch of kids and all that good stuff.
Fast forward a couple years and you're on this podcast, man.
Exactly.
Love stories are our favorite stories.
All that glitters, right?
Would you say your greatest investment in life is love?
Love or Amazon? I don't know which one.
I had to. Sorry. Had to go there.
And that's fair. And that's fair, man. Okay. All right. So you can't say Michael Jordan. And I don't even know if you would, but who is your favorite sports hero?
Tom Brady.
Okay, so now that Tom Brady is with the Buccaneers, I feel like your loyalties are a little bit divided. You're not kind of a New England guy. You are the epitome of a New England guy, and Tom Brady's your hero, as you just said. What do you do?
I
love that this is the most difficult question you've answered tonight.
Jeez, how can I answer
telling.
this? I'm actually happy for him. Like, he's at this stage. He's 40. He's going to be 43, I believe, in August. Obviously, I know his birthday. And no, but he's going to be 43, and he's starting to show very subtle signs of a decline, which, given his age, isn't surprising. But he's still playing at a very high level. And I want to see him do well. He's an amazing guy, and I think he's done everything right, and he handled this really well. But I'm still a Patriots fan. So, but they're in the NFC, so I can kind of root for Tommy and still root for Patriots.
Okay, favorite quotes, because you're huge on mindset and you're huge on philosophy, and I feel like you're super intentional with how you run your business and the attitude and state that you adopt when you're going into whatever you're going into. And so I feel like this is a good question to ask you, like your favorite quotes.
Well, it's funny. I mean, it's I have a friend who has a very big hedge fund, and I went over to visit it, and he's got incredible artwork on every wall. It's probably every piece is $30 million. And you kind of look at it and you're like, wow, that's just super impressive. You come over to my place.
Really cool.
I got a bunch of quotes that cost nothing, but it's not that I'm trying to preserve money. It's more just like, I'd rather my investors come in and my team come in and they see those quotes, and it's more inspiring, and it's kind of like the way we want to approach business. And it's actually amazing the response we get from investors who see these quotes, and I think it tries to encapsulate, the way we go about our business. But that's our office today. When we first launched, we just had one quote on the wall. So I'll take that quote. It's from Vince Lombardi, who obviously was the Super Bowl winning head coach of the Green Bay Packers in the 1960s, obviously.
Everyone knows this.
Yes. I mean, they shouldn't, probably not on your podcast, but broadly speaking. But the quote is, and I'm reading it, it says, "Winning is not a sometime thing, it's an all the time thing. You don't win once in a while. You don't do things right once in a while. You do them right all the time. Winning is habit." And so when we launched, I put that on our walls because I felt that, some people, they put all their effort in, for a period of time, and then they sort of disappear.
Yeah.
And they're not able to kind of consistently deliver what you need them to do. And I think to be really successful, there's some people that kind of figure different things out, but for the most part, it's like people that are really driven to succeed and compete, and that they understand that there's no real shortcuts. You're going to have to work hard, and you're going to have to work hard every day. And that approach, that mindset, just kind of constantly doing things the right way, ultimately gets you to a better place in the end than if you were to take all these shortcuts anyway. And so when my guys, when my team joined, that was kind of the way I wanted them to think. That, if we approach things right every day, this will build a better foundation. These investments that we're making today will pay off in the future. And so, we chose that quote and put on our wall.
Oh my gosh, I love that, because the only thing I remember from like my parents' messages of major wisdom and quotes is that there is no shortcut for hard work. Like there's no way around that. And so just like always invest in the hard work factor of things, putting the time in and showing up every single day. And I would be silly not to ask this for everyone out there, is we're in a very unprecedented time. Like, is the investment in self, or is it looking at future opportunities for retirement? If there was just one area that seems to be more lucrative and withstanding than others.
I think over time, if you invest in the stock market, you're going to probably have, a fairly reasonable return, certainly relative to any other, a lot of different vehicles right now where interest rates are so low. Right. And so if people have some excess money that they don't need and they're not trying to time the market, like my sister, I have a twin sister, and, they have, some excess money, not a lot, but she asked me years ago, what can I do with this money? And I said, look, just buy these 15, 20 companies. You're kind of diversified across that, but they're great companies. They're the Microsofts, the Visas, the Amazons, companies that are going to continue to grow, competitive moats in their business. And they're going to grow a lot faster than, the 50 basis points the bank's given you. And over time, if you let that just kind of ride and you're not trying to time the ups and downs, it's going to compound. And I think that's, each person has their own individual situation. So somebody might want to buy a house. Other people, they need to, give the money to the family, or there's educational issues, or they're paying off loans. So every situation's different. But I think in general, the equity markets, can produce pretty high returns relative to other things. And if you're willing to invest in the long run, the tax base is lower. And, companies compound. Like I bought Amazon in 2007 at $40. It's $3,100 today. I haven't owned it the whole time. I've traded it up and down.
Buddy.
Probably that was good. Not as good as being Jeff Bezos, but I bring up the best one. I got a million bad ones.
You got to start with that.
I'm going to ignore everything that failed. But I mean, that tells you the power of compounding. And I don't think something like Amazon isn't the hardest thing to it's pretty clear for many, many years, and looking at your own habits and consumer habits, that this company was creating, a great competitive mode, and we're in the right business in terms of where the world was going. Apple's another one. I mean, you can buy some of these great businesses, and they're going to be great many, many years from now, and they just kind of compound. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so this is sort of an underhand pitch. If you're not in the finance industry, what are you doing?
Probably something in sports. Even as a little kid, it sounds like I'm from like a generation in like the 1920s, but the newspaper would comment on a Sunday, and I would just sit there and go through every number, every baseball player, and I'd memorize them all. And like, that was what I really enjoyed understanding. I mean, that was fun. Yeah. I'd go visit my grandmother in Boston, and Boston had the Boston Globe. It was the best sports paper out there. And I'd get to, really dive into all these numbers, and I enjoy that stuff. And so I think probably something down those lines where you're using numbers and analytics to understand and predict who are going to be the best players, which is basically what you're doing in stocks. You're just doing it with businesses as opposed to individuals.
So shamelessly, one of my favorite movies of all time is Space Jam. Can you just, just indulge us for a teeny tiny millisecond on MJ?
Yeah, I mean, it's the cool thing is, it's like who you see is, or what you would expect is exactly what you get. Here's a guy who's super competitive. He's not hiding behind anything. If you watch The Last Dance, I mean, like, he's very comfortable with who he is as a person, and he's going to say things that he truly believes. He has nothing to hide. And so, sitting down and meeting him and hanging out with him, it's he's going to talk about the game of basketball and other parts of life, like the way he sees it. And he's not hiding behind anything. And I think some, figures in society and sports figures, there's always something they're kind of hiding. And I think with him, it's pretty open. He's very comfortable with the person he is and stating the things he believes.
What was it like the first time you met him?
It was great. I mean, it's funny because you try not to be like, oh my God, I'm meeting Michael Jordan, and you're going to go in there and just blow yourself up because you're just overwhelmed with the moment. I think
I don't even know what I would say, or just
looking in my job over the years, you meet with CEOs of every major company in America over time, and so you've had these kind of meetings. But with all that said, no one is Michael Jordan, and so you have lessons to draw on where you're not sort of getting yourself psyched up and that you're meeting probably the greatest individual athlete of all time. And but it was very cool. We were having some drinks. Like myself, he likes tequila, the Sincero brands that he's obviously created, which by the way is a great tequila.
This is an unsponsored ad.
Yeah, but Sincero is also sponsoring the All That Glitters is podcast. No, but he loves the game of basketball, and he loves sports, and he loves to compete, and he loves to talk about a lot of different sports. And but he's also involved in a lot of businesses, and so there's a lot of things that we have in common that we'd like to talk about. And for me, growing up watching sports, loving sports, I remember pretty vividly a lot of key moments in his career, and not just with him, but just the game around him. And so we start talking about the game of basketball, and I think he kind of just gave me one of these looks like, this guy really does like the game of basketball. And I think that made him feel comfortable, and we enjoyed talking, and that really allowed us to kind of hit it off.
Was there a point where you kind of felt like a little bit of synergy, like you recalled a certain detail, because you are almost a Rain Man when it comes to understanding, sports moments, sports statistics? Was there a point where you felt like, okay, well, I have Mike's attention?
There were just probably moments we were talking about the game, and I would recall something, or he would say something. I'd be like, yeah, that guy was on this team, or this happened in that game. And, it's like, I'm not like, it's almost seemed like I was like scripting it. Like, how would anyone have this recollection of this absurd like moment in time? But that's, just kind of how I'm wired as it relates to sports. And so I remembered it, and he was a part of it. So I think he remembered it pretty well. So it definitely was a cool thing to talk about.
Is there anything we haven't asked you that you think would be a good ask?
The only thing I'd say is an organization. The one thing about Melvin that I definitely appreciate is just trying to, is kind of just valuing people, and creating a culture where you build like the duration of all the people around you. And so there's so much turnover in a lot of hedge funds. And so they're kind of constantly starting with a new team. And I think, having a team,
turnover?
We have almost no turnover. Our turnover is kind of forced, where it's like, okay, there's always, we have a lot of benchmarking in the sense that like you got a lot of guys and people on your team. And so if somebody's not at the level that you need them to be at, there does come a time where it's like, okay, we need to improve and find ways to get better. And we kind of know, because it's not like there's just one guy. It's like you got 7 or 8 people, and you see where everyone else is performing. A guy like Lucas, being with these people for many, many years, it's like your ability to continue to compete at a high level because you've all been doing it together. Mm-hmm. And that's a big difference maker. And I think a lot of people, at least in my industry, this tremendous turnover, and they don't really value the people that they work with. And so they're constantly trying to, rehire and recreate situations and, figure each other out and understand culture and work ethic. And for us, that's something it's kind of innate. I mean, because we've all been doing it for so long. And so when we bring somebody in, when we bring these young guys in, they just kind of slide right in, and it really allows you to keep building off a bigger base. Whereas not everyone else, but like a lot of firms that don't kind of value things the same way, they're sort of always, breaking everything down and rebuilding. And they have a couple-year period, and they break it down and they rebuild. And I think when you have the foundation in place, it's a lot easier to just keep moving forward.
There's a lot of value to having people that have been around for a while, people that have loyalty. And loyalty stems from leadership. And
Definitely.
that is indisputable.
Yeah.
And I think you've created part of why we wanted you on, because I know it's so much a part of who you are, being a good leader. And, you know, you're constantly talking about trying to be a good leader for people, and you're such a big picture person, and that so much of your focus goes into that. And I think it would be remiss to say that, you know, part of your success isn't because you're so good at building a team that has a common goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the trickiest thing is just getting everybody on board to buy into the mission. And if you can do that, and it's much easier if you have a good mission, and I feel like you guys do, you can materialize great things, and you seem to consistently do that. And we're so grateful to have you on board here.
Thank
Gabe.
you guys for having me.
I really appreciate the takeaways of never underestimating hard work and believing in the multifaceted characteristics of everyone, and that you're not just one thing, but specifically being a great leader and investing in the community and culture of your businesses, and using sports as a parallel for that is just really unique to hear. And even in design, I think that those ideas can be manifested in so many great ways to make people feel like they can perform their best. And, you know, we're all going toward a better future and a better day every day. So thank you so much for providing this value. And
thanks, Gabe. We're so grateful that you
Awesome.
came on the podcast. You really set the bar low for future guests, man.
Ditto to that. And thank you out there for supporting our pursuit in bringing on stellar humans to help us learn as we go along. If something in this episode spoke to you, or you know of someone that just might double down on this episode, make like MJ and slam dunk this episode right on over. Boom. And don't forget, boom. And don't forget, if you leave us a sparkling review on iTunes, we just might share it on our Instagrams. Bye for now, and I'm already pumped for our next guest episode.
Check us out and find more sparkle at allthatglitterspodcast.com. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Bei Amazon finden Sie niedrige Preise, wann immer Sie wollen. Unterwegs in der Natur?
Wow, das ist ja ein niedriger Preis.
Mitten im Wald?
So ein niedriger Preis.
Und wenn Sie vor wütenden Eichhörnchen davonlaufen?
Wow, das ist ja ein niedriger Preis.
Amazon. Niedrige Preise, wann und wo Sie wollen. Bei Amazon finden Sie niedrige Preise, wann immer Sie wollen. Unterwegs in der Natur?
Wow, das ist ja ein niedriger Preis.
Mitten im Wald?
So ein niedriger Preis.
Und wenn Sie vor wütenden Eichhörnchen davonlaufen?
Wow, das ist ja ein niedriger Preis.
Amazon. Niedrige Preise, wann und wo Sie wollen.